Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
You are listening to the Seattle Shrimp Tank, streaming to you live on Facebook. You can catch us every other week on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio here on Facebook until we resume broadcasting in our physical studio. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon, and you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. And always through iHeartRadio, we'll get to that in a minute, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you stream your most valuable podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you are subscribed, please rate our podcast. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. Our guest for today's podcast, well, she's a returning guest, first appearing back in December 2018. December 12th, 2018. I got some COVID brain there. Jackie Wood Baker with SparkWood Events. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. That's a long time ago.
Does it seem like an eternity?
Well, it's definitely a lifetime, and everything has changed. And so in that sense, it seems like an eternity for sure.
Yeah, the thing that kind of blows me away is it's a little over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, if you take into consideration the whole last year has pretty much been shut down, it just blows my mind that it in one way doesn't seem that long ago, and another way it seems like an eternity. So Dan, how you doing?
Well, I didn't know if you were going to invite me to the show. I thought you guys were going to just fly off and do the show without me. But so Jackie, welcome back. You know, and I got to tell you, Brad, I love how you start the shows. It seems like, especially now with the passing of the legendary Larry King, you had the you are listening to the Shrimp Tank podcast. So rest in peace, Larry King. I only have one quick announcement, and this will act as our precursor to our great interview coming up with Jackie. But we are starting a patron program, Brad. We are starting one. We're starting effective next week. We're going to be getting the word out about this patron program. And I just wanted to give a little bit of an example of what we're doing. So as you know, we come live to you every other week. We're live streaming on Zoom and Facebook. And one day we'll be doing it from the studio again. But in the in-between weeks, Brad and I will be interviewing experts, people who are not necessarily CEOs, but those who advise and who offer wisdom and guidance to CEOs on a variety of different topics, everything from growing your business profitably to supply chain to just a heck of leadership development or human resources. So the folks who are helping CEOs that we're going to be interviewing, we're going to go across the globe, Brad. We're going to get people from all over, even down under in Australia. So anyway, it'll be only those episodes will only be available to patron members. We'll have more of that to come and talk about in the future, but I wanted people to be prepared for it.
Awesome. I know you've been a big push behind that, and I appreciate all the effort that you put into making that happen for the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
Well, my pleasure. And it's also my pleasure that we put a push ahead to talk about Jackie Wood Baker. You know, since the last time she's been here, she's added a new last name, and she's added a pivot that started because of COVID. And we're going to find out a lot about that today. Jackie is a longtime friend and colleague and client of mine. She's also a fellow Rotarian, lives in Kingston, Washington. Brad, you're going to give the whole bio, but Jackie, thanks again for pinch hitting. We had a postponement, and Jackie stepped up to the plate as always. So Brad, tell everybody a little bit more about Jackie Wood Baker.
You got it. Well, Jackie Wood Baker is the founder and Chief Experience Officer of SparkWood Events. She brings over 25 years of corporate marketing, strategy, and event planning experience with positions at both large corporations such as Starbucks and Washington Mutual, in addition to startups such as Qpass and Kozmo. She provides the leadership and overall big picture thinking for the team, in addition to event execution. Jackie's a proud graduate of Cornell University's School of Hotel Administration. Born in Hong Kong and raised in Honolulu, Jackie's international multicultural perspective is an asset to her clients. Jackie, welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank. We're excited to have you as a returning guest and have you catch us up on all the changes that have occurred in your life and in your industry in the last 2 years.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.
Well, aloha, Jackie, and I'm going to start I'm going to start with this. You know, the last time we saw you on the Shrimp Tank, you were and still are a great event planner. Obviously, March 2020 hits and the ripple effect, it was like a tsunami, right? Mm-hmm. It was about March 8th or 9th, I think, when everything started stopping. And event planning became something that was not top of mind for anybody. You had to make some shifts. Talk a little bit about March 2020 and the subsequent months and what you've added to your repertoire.
So I think that's a great way to put it, is like everything started stopping. The interesting thing, though, I'm going to disagree or just kind of nuance it a little bit, what you were saying about people weren't thinking about event planning. They really were. And they were really like worried about what they were going to do, how much money they could get back when they started canceling. We still need to get this group together. We still need to launch this product. How do we do that? So it was a flurry of activity and a lot of confusion and people getting hit left, right, and center in this particular industry. But of course, you know, across everywhere in hospitality, we've seen that. For me personally, I was teeing up and super excited to have like the biggest year yet since I started my company almost 7 years ago, and things were going really well and really busy. And then that hit, and then I had to help my clients kind of rethink everything. Cancel, postpone, move to virtual. How do we do that? Just a lot of confusion. Now, I think then after we moved or we changed or we postponed, you know, there was nothing else. It was just sort of quiet. It was crickets. And it was definitely stressful. I see a lot of my friends in the industry who work in hotels and other, you know, affiliated lines of business losing their jobs. It was just kind of truly devastating. And just every week on Facebook or, you know, LinkedIn, you're seeing this happen. And I wasn't, you know, I didn't lose my job because I am my own boss, which is great. But I also needed to figure out how to move forward and what to do and how and advise people, but also do the research, figure out what is it that I can do that makes sense. And I did do quite a substantial pivot and fell into it. And I can go into a little bit about that if that now is a good time. So yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Please do, because I think that's an excellent story to tell instead of us just asking questions on that topic. Yeah.
So I was like, what is it about? Because I really had to do some soul searching. I had a lot of people that I know in my network that went into completely different lines of work. So I had to say, like, what is it about event planning that I love? What is the core of what I'm good at? How can I be happy? Should I get a job doing something else? Should I just completely change industries? And what I figured out was the beauty of events for me is really connecting people. And I could still do that in a way that was going to be something I enjoyed doing and I really had a lot of value. So I just started sort of an offshoot, if you will. And what I found was there was a great need as people were moving into virtual meetings, events, fundraisers, and things like that, to still feel like they're connected to each other, even though they're looking through a screen. And what we did was take the swag, let's just start there, the swag you would normally get in an event, you know, a mug or a notebook or whatever, sponsors are handing out things that you still get them even though you're there. If you normally would get lunch or a snack or something of that sort or a cocktail, you're able to kind of deliver that virtually so they can still have a collaborative, cohesive, you know, event together and an experience together. So that was the big shift. And the way that I sort of, you know, had to put a more of a mission statement kind of thought process to it, once I was, you know, like, what is it exactly that I'm doing? You know, I'm not just sending out boxes, right? Is that, you know, we're really focused on helping organizations create and then maintain meaningful relationships with their employees, their clients, their customers, their donors, their attendees. And so the concept of SparkWood Connect as a division of SparkWood events was born. And I tell you what, everyone loves to get something in the mail. And this is just how it is now. So you're not going to have people going out. And it's just been going gangbusters. I really am so delighted and feel very, very blessed to be able to have an opportunity to do something that really delivers a great impact to people, makes them smile. It feels like every day I work in Santa's workshop year round. And just it's that the opportunity to surprise and delight someone on the other end is like really cool as well.
So I'm going to ask you how you came up with the idea.
Yeah, how did I? Well, it was a sunny day and a couple of margaritas on my deck. Once upon a time. And yeah, it just came up like that. I was having a chat with a friend and I said, what am I going to do? What are we going to do in this industry? And we just talked about things we missed. And then we were just joking around like, well, I just miss getting a lot of stuff. Like, I don't get any stuff anymore. Mm-hmm. And then it was then we riffed on that. Like, well, you could still do that, but actually, what is it that's important to the attendee? How do you make things not digital? How do you have something that's, tactile and involved and physical as a part of it? So we saw that there's some other companies were starting to do things like this, did a bunch of research, and then just reached out to my network saying, hey, I used to do this for you when we're in person, but then I can help you. People are working from home. They don't have space in their living room to start putting things together. And that's where it started out, was with a few friends in my network who were like, you do this now? My house has been taken over, or my apartment. Like, I can't do this, right? And I said, well, I can, because I've done it before. And that was great. So a little back history to that was when I worked at a consulting firm as their internal event planner years ago, I loved doing this. So I was in charge of the annual company gift. And I helped figure out what the gift was and how we're going to wrap it. And then I would get them out to everyone. We'd just do it in my house. It was sort of a pet project, got the whole family involved. And we'd send out like 300, 400, 500 of these Christmas presents or holiday presents, end of year gifts every year. And so I knew I could do it. I knew all the contacts. I had the space. I had the routine. And it just went from there.
I think an important part of what you're talking about, and I just, to clarify before we dive into break, to clarify, not only can you help the conference put together a cool conference that people are getting their swag prior to sitting in front of their Zoom monitor to do Zoom, so they've got their cool things. You've also got a way for employers to have some fun and engage employees who they're no longer walking down the halls anymore and seeing in cubicles or in offices or whatever. Everybody's working from home. You have a way to help engage and bring them together. And it kind of to segue into your answer, I had somebody who talked to me and said, we know how to take care of our clients in a virtual way. We're struggling with how do we engage with our own employees? So did I hit that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a matter of engaging. So it's not like you're in a presentation and you're just like in this meeting and you're just watching and you can just tune out, you can turn your video off, you can just walk away and not be engaged. What we're trying to do is, I work with my clients to help them create a program that provides engagement at different levels, right? And so advising them like, okay, a Zoom meeting, that is just too long to do it that way. You're going to want breaks. You're going to want, are you going to do an activity? How many people can be in that activity? How can we bring the physical to that? So you're not always another online game or those types of things. And to kind of engage them in a surprise and delight way. What I'm finding now is, I've been asked quite a few times, and we're working on a good few projects where it's like a secret thing. So every day of their annual meeting or conference, you open one thing. And the activities are tailored to what was in that package, but you don't know what's in there. And I think that's also really fun. And it's a way to sort of have the meeting planners or the company owners or those key stakeholders say like, okay, how can we make this extra interesting and fun for our people?
That sounds so cool. And you know, it sounds cool as well as we do have to take a commercial break to find out who our first cool commercial of the day is. We're going to take that short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Jackie Wood Baker with SparkWood Events and SparkWood Connect for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to find out how an event planner plans a wedding in the middle of a pandemic. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more from the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by IdealLife360.com. What would it be like to be in the best shape of your life, both physically and mentally, every day for the rest of your life? Have awesome relationships with the people you care about most. Never having to worry about money again. What would it be like if you received a letter out of the blue and suddenly discovered you had 20 more years to live than you ever imagined? What would you do with those extra years of your life? How many lives would you touch? What kind of legacy would you leave behind? What changes would you make today knowing you had 20 more years in your future? What new big challenges would you take on? What would be next? Visit www.ideallife360.com or call 1-844-LIFE-360. That numbers is 1-844-543-3360. And call to discover how to rethink, redefine, and reinvent the best years of your life.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I am Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host, Dan Whedon. Remember, you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you download your streaming podcasts, or catch us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For our next segment, Hot or Not.
And Hot or Not is sponsored by Shrimp Peeler Sponsors, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun newspaper. Jackie, you know how Hot or Not works. You've played this game before, so I'm just going to dive right into it. And by the way, you win nothing still. Even we won't even be sending you anything for winning this game. Okay. But Hot or Not, Jackie, getting married in the midst, and I mean the midst, of a global pandemic. Is that hot or not?
You know, I'm going to go the other direction and say hot.
Okay. I thought you might. How did I mentioned you got a new last name? Talk about, you got married in August. Talk about
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're an event planner. Talk about how that all came about.
So, well, we had decided to get married, and it was going to be a big, big affair. It was like I had family flying in from all over the world. They were going to make it a big family reunion. It was structured to be 7 days with at least 1 or 2 activities per day, like a conference. The problem was I'm the bride, and so I still would have to do everything and then be the guest of honor. So the stress levels were definitely going up a little bit, but I had it all under control. And then COVID, I had estimates. I was running it like my own event, but a little more judiciously since the money's coming out of our own pocket. So then it all hit, and it was seeming like, I'm not sure how likely it is for our international family to fly in. And those were the first ones to cancel. Then we had ones that were like domestic, because again, I'm from Honolulu. We're having people flying from Honolulu. That wasn't going to happen. I mean, once they stopped travel from Europe and everything, we're like, okay, well, that's gone. Well, maybe the Canadians can come. Then they closed the Canadian border. And, it was really hard because I had been thinking about how to do this event for years before I even met my second husband. It's just like, oh, I've been to weddings and I've planned these beautiful events. What would I want to do? So then I thought, well, we can have just local people, like from the Seattle area. And even then it got shrunk down. So from an original list of 150 attendees that we were thinking would be here, we ended up doing an event outdoors at home on our deck. It was a beautiful day, and we had about 20 people. Most of whom live in the neighborhood. So they walked here or, just kind of came on their golf carts, whatever. And we had actually a lovely time. It was the first time most people had even seen each other in a long time. You know, we had masks on when you weren't eating or drinking, which of course then turns into the fact that you're usually eating and drinking, but people were keeping their distance. And it was a really lovely, low stress affair. So had a lot of fun. It's all about being flexible and resetting your expectations. And, you know, it turned out great. It was really lovely.
So my hot or not for you, Jackie, is you kind of touched on a little bit about, hot or not, delegating jobs, even as a one-woman show.
Is it hot to delegate, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Like it is, and it's something I struggle with because I like to have things be done a certain way, but it's just not scalable. And I think for a while when things were slow, I just took care of everything. And then now things are getting busier. I just have to bring people in to work for me, work with me, outsource design, you know, outsource this and that. And delegating is a wonderful thing. I think it depends who you delegate to. You know, we're working with family members, the kids and the hubby, and sometimes they don't want to be delegated to, but you just got to work with what you have in the scenario.
Jackie,
yeah, well,
you know,
I
go ahead, Brad.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Dan.
No, are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Jackie, you mentioned that you're as busy now as that, like things have been going crazy, which I think is awesome. And maybe somebody out there is saying, what's keeping her the most busy? What is it that these businesses, these organizations are reaching out to you, asking you to provide either for a conference or to their employees? What is just keeping you the busiest?
Well, I mean, there's just such I think a pent up demand now that we realize, you know, at the end, let me just back up. At the end of last year in Q4 2020, there was definitely a hope that we could get things going again. We could be back in person. So there was a lot of holding off on decisions. I was really busy through the holidays because companies weren't doing, you know, employee parties or anything like that. So then we were doing a lot of gifting. Then once we moved, then when they realized they weren't going to be able to do anything in Q1, then the, you know, annual kickoff meetings, you know, that a lot of companies have to set the tone for the year, those started coming in, and those were really big projects. And that's what it is. It's not only the trying to be creative with your clients and being like, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, let's brainstorm on some cool things, what's trendy, what's hot to receive and practical for people at home. But also, you know, how do we want to just create the overall experience? And so shipping globally has been really quite a thing. You know, this project I've currently that's overtaking us is 800 kits. In the kit is 3 packages, and each package is 2 things, you know, and they all come with something else in there. So it's just a lot of volume. You know, so even when you've got the deal, you've picked all the stuff, it looks beautiful, then it starts arriving and it's like, okay, we got to turn it and burn it and get it out and then move on to the next thing. So that's
so Jackie, what I was going to say was I think what's somewhat brilliant about what you've done is to take, you know, the elements of what people really look for, and to a large degree, I'm sure somebody who's been in events as long as you have and worked at a corporate scale, you've kind of taken, you know, what's old and turn it new again. And the reason that I say that is I worked for a global organization for about 18 years, the first 18 years of my financial planning career. And, you know, we had an annual meeting, and it was a big sheding. I mean, it was you know, if you were a manager or above, it was 10 days long. It was 7 days for the sales force. I mean, it was always in an exotic location, but the trip in and of itself was great, but it was all the little trickle things that you got to kind of build up, you know, the anticipation and to drive the sales force. It was, you know, to want to achieve so they could qualify for, you know, bigger and better things, and to kind of take that and kind of reimagine it and repackage it is great. And I've got several questions that I want to make sure that I get to with kind of the future, but it's really been interesting to see just on the receiving end, right? Because we're all in a business where people are courting us. Largely it's been lunches or dinners, or there's been some sort of get together. And it's like, well, when restaurants are closed, how do we do that? I think this is really catching on because, there's been opportunities for me to, hey, if you want to come to my lunch webinar, I'm going to have pizza delivered to you, right? Or, hey, I know we used to meet at a local place called El Gaucho, but we're going to have, you can go and pick up a dinner, right? And take it home, and we're still going to provide dinner. And then, I've seen cases where, at least for one of my kids' parties, he had friends, not just here, but actually a couple who had since moved away, and we sent pizzas to them, and they had a Zoom pizza party, right? And then getting together with family, even on the holidays, because we had to distance ourselves at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and quote, having a Zoom call running, so people could interact and still participate. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you see what's transpired, over the last several months. How do you see that impacting live events in the future?
Well, I think one of the one thing that I know is that we're not going to go back to just live. There's always going to be another component in there. I think that now that people know how they can do like virtual events, there are going to be people who are unable to travel for cost wise or health reasons, health risk, that type of thing. So that's not going to go anywhere at all. So we're just gonna have to figure out a way for people to be able to engage in multiple levels. I think it's going to take, a year ago, or a year and a half ago, Zoom was sort of a new thing. I remember Dan telling me about it. We're going to have a Zoom. And I'm like, what is that? Aren't we being fancy? Right. So now it's just like, okay, we're the experts on Zoom. We can do breakouts. We can play games. We can, do all of these things. And that's not going to go away. So how do we integrate that back into live is going to be the challenge. And it'll actually be kind of fun to figure out how we're going to do that.
Awesome.
Brad, can I cut in and ask her a follow-up question on that?
Absolutely.
All right. Because it's interesting you said that. I have a group of other consultants, a global group of other consultants, and we are planning a September deal up in Whistler, right? And we're confident about the vaccine. We're confident the Canadians will let us back in, all of that, right? But my two of them who are in Australia said, we don't know if we're even going to be allowed to travel then with some of the restrictions and the cost. We can't, so as people look at this, some can make it, some can't. And I know event planners are thinking about this, but do you have any kind of off the top, how do you get multiple people some who are at the event and some who can't make it? What are some of the tricks and ideas that you think may be coming?
So one of the things that I've been discussing with a client of mine right now that's going to try and bring their event back in person in September. They skipped it last year. Is to sort of think of it like taping a TV show, and you have a live studio audience, right? But they're not crammed together. You're at tables, but they're spread out, or you do like sort of some sort of unique seating or whatever the government will allow at that point, and then you televise or stream the rest of it. So perhaps, if you're going to do an in-person ticket, you're going to charge, more money because you get meals with it and some opportunities for networking. But when maybe you pay less because you are going to be, streaming it and that type of thing. But then you need to build in some other ways for people to connect and be able to network and sell. So that's sort of the mindset that we're looking at, is just the technology needs to be better. The production value needs to be better in order to keep people engaged. Because they're not in the room, but you can definitely get people in.
And Jackie, and before I go to commercial, it's more important than ever to hire somebody like you or other special event planners, because Brad and I, we're barely able to do this. We're barely able to cobble together this. You start getting complicated, you really need somebody, don't you?
You really do, because there's just so many moving parts now, and the technology is changing all the time. There's new companies coming out that do streaming services or meeting planning. They can set up a virtual trade show for you. There are ways to recognize sponsors. There's setups that are like tens of thousands of dollars for a meeting, and there are ones that are like you could do it for 5,000. Now there's a tremendous difference in what you can get for that. So it's important to have someone help you navigate those components. And then when you have something that is in person, you still need someone who knows what they're doing to run it no matter what, just the in-person part, and adhere to safety standards.
Yeah, I've got a follow-up question after the break on something like that.
Okay,
along those lines.
I'll let you do that then. You'll be right after we do the break. We're going to take that break.
And the plead the fifth.
And the plead the fifth. Absolutely. We're going to take that break to hear from our guest, Jackie Wood Baker with SparkWood Events and SparkWood Connect for our plead the fifth section of the show. And we're going to find out what Jackie thinks about certain qualities. You'll find out, because you're not going to walk away. You're going to stay right here. Come back for more from the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
Thank you, Dan. And the Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by our studio sponsor, Whedon Unleashed. As a business owner, you do not have a professional life and a personal life. You have a life, and that life is full of opportunities and obstacles. Your business is the vehicle that fuels your life. If you run out of fuel because of a crisis, then your entire lifestyle is affected. Dan Whedon works with small and medium-sized business owners to ensure that no calamity is fatal. Dan focuses on accelerating business growth while at the same time planning and implementing strategies on preventing, mitigating, and recovering from those obstacles of business and life. Through Dan's consulting work and his partnership with First Underwriters Insurance, he can work with you with confidence to unleash the value of your business and lifestyle. To get a complimentary review of your situation, call Dan at 1-360-271-1592 or email him at dan@danwhedon.com and tell Dan that you heard him on the Seattle Shrimp Tank podcast and receive 20% discount on any work that is agreed to. Be unleashed and be well.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I am Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon, and you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Do not forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast streaming service, including iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
And Plead the Fifth is sponsored by West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun newspaper. Thank you very much for that. Brad, I want to give you a chance to ask your follow-up question before we dive into Plead the Fifth.
So I'm excited about something that I've been invited to participate in. Of course, I had to register and pay my little fee, et cetera. But for anybody who listens to the show pretty regularly, knows that I'm actively involved in youth aviation through the Civil Air Patrol, have been most of my life. And the California wing of Civil Air Patrol is putting together a cadet conference, and it's coming up in just a couple of weeks. And what's really interesting, this is normally a big sheding. I mean, it's they gather cadets from all over the nation. They fly in, they participate. It's a 3 or 4 day event. And I think that they've come up with a brilliant solution to it. It's virtual, but what I found most, and I will tell you, I probably wouldn't have gone except for the fact that they're creating a virtual campus, right? So it's going to be a virtual conference where you have, you're represented, with a character. You can pick your skin, and you can move around to the various elements of the event. You can interact with other individuals who are going to be at the event. You can interact with some of the sponsors who are going to be there. I would imagine that this is one of those things, Jackie, that you mentioned is in the tens of thousands of dollars. And what I'm working for an organization that relies largely on benefactors, I'm thinking somebody associated with the company had contributed to that. But I'm interested to know what you think, or what about kind of the future of this type of an event, we kind of segues from what we were talking about, where there's going to be this interactivity. It's not just going to be just like this.
Right. And I think that's the challenge is people need to be able to get together and they're going to want to be able to experience things. But how do we do that in a way that is going to be quote unquote safe? If it's now that we've, even when we get past sort of COVID-19, people are now aware what germs are and how you can get sick. They know, and then it's ingrained in their habits. So they're going to look at things that we would have done before and go like, oh, that's like, this is a germ factory, or, I don't want to be shoulder to shoulder in a big like mosh pit at a concert or those types of things. But activities will have to be designed in a way that are going to be able to allow folks to still cheer each other on, try things out, gain a lot of exposure for sponsors. So lots of these events are funded not by ticket sales, but by sponsor.
Right.
And so if the sponsors aren't getting the benefit from it, then they're not going to put in the big money. They just don't have the crowds. It doesn't make sense. So event planners have to, and sort of like these, especially these big event planners that you're working with, sponsors, come up with things that are engaging, but that really deliver some value. And that's a big question mark when you're used to just being able to do a lot of crowds.
Yeah.
Was that answer sort of?
No, I think so. I find it fascinating. And like I said, I signed up almost for the only reason was to see what was going on. We've lost Dan. So we're going to keep on going here.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with plead the fifth. So just recently got married. The last time we were together, we found out about your celebrity crush.
Oh, right.
And I'm just wondering, is your spouse jealous about your celebrity crush with Captain America?
He kind of looks like Captain America. Some would probably be like, oh my God, no, not my dad. But there's definitely some underlying resemblance there. So that was just, I think, just happenstance.
Here we go. Dan is re-arriving. So anyway, here's a plead the fifth. If you could share just one piece of advice for someone just starting out, whether it was in the event planning business or in any entrepreneurial pursuit, what would it be?
Flexibility. I think that's the main thing. You don't know what every day is going to bring. I mean, I was the type of person who had things planned out to like the nth detail, like a year out, because that's what I do for a living, right? So I would do that for my work life, and then I would do that for my home life, and all of this, and you just can't. And sometimes you have to be able to really kind of go with the flow, and opportunities come up then. And so, yeah, flexibility and just kind of being open to why is this happening, and how can I make the best of it?
Welcome back, Dan.
So Jackie, this is something that never happened at conferences before, where somebody just freezes like for 30 seconds or a minute. They just don't move. I knew I went bye-bye, but I'm back. I have a backup plan. Yep. So did you ask my qualities question, Brad, by chance?
I did not. I kept it for you.
Oh, thank you. So Jackie, it's obvious you're a tremendous entrepreneur. You're able to pivot. You're able to create something with your business that was different and new and going to be ongoing. My question for you on the plead the fifth, and maybe it's not such a hard plead the fifth, but what's the most important quality? The most important quality to be an entrepreneur in the 21st century?
So that's similar to what Brad asked.
Oh, great.
In fact, it might be the exact same question.
It's a different question, but it could have the same answer.
It could have the same answer. So
I missed it. I missed the answer. You're gonna have to tell me.
I know you missed the plead the fifth. Okay, but you can watch it when you download.
I'll tune into the podcast later on and watch the whole thing.
Yes. So I think I'd mentioned flexibility before being an entrepreneur, but in the 21st century, I think it's embracing technology. and not embracing technology for technology's sake, but how can it actually make the event better and improve things? Because if it doesn't, and you're just doing it because it's sort of something catchy, then it can actually diminish and take away from what we're, trying to accomplish at the event. So, but there's so many great things out there that make it better and more fun. And I think you should just be really open-minded to that.
So Jackie, I've got one final question, I think, unfortunately, before we have to wrap up, and you touched on it earlier in the show, and that was kind of I think all of us, right? The shock and awe. We get hit with this pandemic, we get shut down. I think there were those of us who felt like this was going to be relatively short-lived and we would get back. That was our position, just with regard to market activity. But I'm surprised, at least initially I was, about how quarantined, locked down we were going to need to be. You talked a little bit about that epiphany, that moment that you had. I'm curious to understand how long that was for you. How long of a period of time was that for you? Because as you said, you had some peers, right, that basically bailed.
Yeah, and they had to bail because they had to make ends meet, right? And they knew that when you're in charge of doing live events, like you work on sound or lighting or catering or in a venue, and you can't sell it. You have to go a different way. I was open-minded while I was collecting unemployment, benefits for, small businesses and applying for my PPP loan or, doing all the things I need to do, to be open to maybe there's something else. I'm not going to be doing what I did before. Those days are gone. I can't do what I did before. It's completely changed in a matter of a few weeks. And every day that went by, more things changed. So I just had to be open to that. And I don't think it's not going to go back to the way it was, but it can be better and different. But it just sunk in a little every day. There was no big epiphany. It was just sort of like, I think this is how this is going to end up being,
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, Jackie, we want to thank you so much for coming on the program today. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you or learn more information about SparkWood events or SparkWood Connect, how can they get more information?
Well, to get a hold of me, the best way right now is to go to sparkwoodevents.com, or you can send me an email at jackie@sparkwoodevents.com, or give me a call at 206-423-1924. The SparkWood Connect website will be up in, January. It'll be up probably the second week of February. There's a lot to put on there. It's definitely going to be exciting and a great place for people to go and see all the examples that we've done. But in the meantime, get a hold of me, and then if I can help in any way, that'd be great.
That's awesome. Well, our next show from the virtual Wheaton Unleashed studio will be on Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. Make sure you check out all of the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. And that's certainly what Dan's going to do, so he can get the response to Jackie's question. And you can catch us on wherever you stream your podcasts, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And remember, to become a shark, we all start out as shrimps.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.